I got all my stuff together here. So welcome to the December Lunch Bunch. This month, I wanted to share, kind of our 2025 plan thus far, and talk a little bit about the upcoming legislative session, which starts in, just a matter of weeks, which is kind of crazy. So on our agenda today, talking a little bit about our priorities for the year, the legislative session, and then kind of honing in on the first quarter of the year and how you can plug in. So we have some proactive work. I've kind of thought about this in two buckets, like our proactive work, what are we still trying to move forward, and then our defense work as we try to protect, as Dolly mentioned, the winds and the work that we've done here in Colorado, and really focusing a lot of our proactive work on the local level, and doing some defense work at the federal level. So at the state legislative session, we are forming a legislative team. Some of you are interested in joining that or are joining that. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like towards in a bit. But really, it's a new thing that we're trying out this year. We want to get our members more involved and engaged in the legislative session. It's an area that we have a lot of impact in, and it's just an interesting opportunity, or just an interesting component to kind of learn how laws get made in the state and how to be part of that. I'm going to talk about three bills very generally, and this is not necessarily the three bills that we're going to work on, but these are three that are sort of rising to the top. I want to preface that during the legislative session this year, we are facing a $1 billion deficit. Like, we're going to have to cut $1 billion of spending from the state, and that's because of Tabor. That really limits the amount of money that the state can spend, that it collects in taxes and fees. So there isn't a lot of exciting proactive legislation that can run this year, because the state just doesn't have the money, and there's going to be a lot of cuts, and it's going to be a really hard legislative session. And we'll be talking more about that next month, but just wanted to sort of preface that. Unfortunately, we are in a very lean year. So the first effort that is underway, and this is a priority by the governor's office, and it's been a priority of Mountain Mamas and other climate folks in the past, is to ensure that we reach this goal of 100% renewable energy by 2040. And this was written into the climate action plan that was passed, I think it was 2019, that set goals for the state to, reduce our emissions, and then the governor, as a result of that, has written a couple iterations of a roadmap for how we're going to, reduce our emissions. And one of the goals within that is to reduce, or is to get to 100% clean electricity by 2040. And that will be, requiring utilities to get to 100% electricity by 2040. There is still a lot of details that need to be worked out around this bill, and we're going to get a lot of pushback from the utilities on it, but this most likely will be a priority for us. But kind of exactly how that looks is yet to be determined. We are also looking at, there's a big effort to expand our transmission capacity in Colorado. This is quite a wonky bill. And in fact, it's just a concept really at this point. But essentially, if we want to make these expansions of renewable energy, we need transmission lines to carry that energy and to carry that extra electricity that we want to run. And there is a whole host of entities that need to be part of that, from the utilities to the companies that make these sorts of transmission lines, the local municipalities that they'll run through, and the communities that they will run through. And they tried to do something at the last legislative session, and they just frankly couldn't get it done in time because there was so much to work through. But it's a big effort that needs to happen if we're going to reach these goals and make sure that folks on the Western Slope can get access to renewable energy, and that we're putting a lot of electricity and a lot of energy on our grids, and they're not able to handle it. And so this bill will sort of help Colorado expand their capacity to do that. So maybe a little wonky, but it's really important. And then the last one is around improving Colorado's building performance standards. And this is really trying to update our, continue to update our building standards to make sure that we're reducing the emissions of our buildings. And I'm sure some of you have seen that there's been some lawsuits filed against the city of Denver on their emissions requirement or their building performance standards. I think that the governor is trying to create some opportunity for building owners to be more incentivized. And there is a pot of money that Colorado was awarded that's specifically for reducing building emissions. And he wants to use that money to provide some incentives. So I think the legislation is really trying to ease the path for buildings to reduce their emissions, and using a more carrot approach, which is the governor's, general approach to this. So we will see. We'll see how that goes, but that will probably be, top of mind as we're looking at priorities for next year. And there's some other bills too. There's a lot of other bills. Again, because of the funding issues, we may not see some of them come to fruition. But I know that there's a couple of bills targeting solar expansion. One particularly around schools. That may be running. So there are, and I'm sure some of you on the call have also heard of other legislation, but December is kind of still a time of folks figuring out, what's going to run, who's going to sponsor these bills, and really kind of getting things ready for the January session. So I'll pause there and see if there's any questions about these bills or other bills that might be running. Okay. Well, feel free to raise your hand and, was there a question? No. Okay. Feel free to raise your hand and stop me at any time. Okay. So continuing on, so the legislative session will be, top of mind, I would say, for the next 4 months. It runs from January through May, through to the beginning of May, not through the whole month. But also, we're going to be doing a lot of work with the Public Utilities Commission. And this is the commission that regulates our utilities. And they are... We have a couple of big campaigns that we are working on. So we've talked about this at previous lunch bunches, but but Xcel is getting ready to close their last coal plant. They're closing a number of coal plants over the next couple of years, but Pueblo Unit 3 is going to be the last coal plant in Colorado that gets closed at in 2031. And right now, Xcel is working on their plan for how they're going to make up that energy loss once the coal plant is gone. And so right now, of course, there is a big push for from our side on renewables over gas and nuclear, which are the two other modes of energy that are being proposed. And we are, we're going to make sure that we do everything we can to convince the Public Utilities Commission that Xcel should be investing in solar and wind over, more natural gas or carbon capture. There has been a lot of talk about building a nuclear power plant in Pueblo, but that is very expensive and untested and would take longer to build than we would still need to make up that energy before a nuclear plant was closed or was built. So there's lots of problems with that option, but we will be working very hard to make sure that we are replacing those jobs with good jobs, that there is clean energy going in to Pueblo, not only because the coal plant has been emitting terrible pollution for decades, but also because Pueblo doesn't get access to the energy that's being produced. So making sure that they aren't, that they're getting clean energy, particularly because they're not getting any of the benefit. We are also going to be working on the gas infrastructure plan rulemaking, which again, a lot of this stuff is super wonky, but there are huge benefits in terms of reducing our pollution here in Colorado, and hitting our emissions goals to reduce to reduce those emissions from gas. And so I don't know a ton about this one yet because we have been more focused on the Pueblo closure, but the PUC will be going through a rulemaking process with Xcel around sort of their planning for gas over the next however many years. And of course, our position is to minimize gas infrastructure investments and to promote non-pipeline alternatives. And we want to see them set a bold 2035 clean heat decarbonization target of at least 50% greenhouse gas reduction from 2015 levels. So that all, sort of feeds back into the state plan and the state goals of reducing our emissions that match the Paris Accord. Whether the U.S. is part of that or not, we still recognize it and are the goal, or and those goals are written into our law. So the Public Utility Commission will be something we'll be talking a lot about, and it's a very, I think people don't pay a lot of attention to what happens there. It's a small commission, it's relatively friendly, but they're dealing with a lot at all times around these issues, and so it can move pretty slowly sometimes. So I'll pause there and see if there's any questions on the PUC work. Okay. And then I just wanted to mention quickly, I know some of you live in Jeffco and some of you don't, but we have been working on a public school sustainability campaign for about a year and a half now. And we are really asking the school district, which is the second and biggest in the state, to reduce their carbon footprint and prioritize sustainability to help the state meet its goals. And, for various reasons that I'm sure we all care about, make sure that our schools are healthy places to learn, that we have, low emitting HVAC systems, that we have clean school buses for kids to ride on. And we're reducing, the amount of food that gets thrown in the landfill and all the waste that happens at lunchtime. So we've been working on that for a while. And so if you're in Jeffco and are interested in that, I think one of the next things we're going to try for is passing a policy at the school board level to make sure the district is prioritizing that. They have hired a sustainability sustainability manager, thanks to our efforts, and actually just met with her this morning. And so we are moving ahead with that, and that will be a big priority for us this next year. Moving into the defense work, one of the big things that the president-elect has talked about is rolling back the Inflation Reduction Act. And this was a law that passed a couple of years ago that put a ton of money into clean energy investments, both for local governments and state governments to reduce their emissions, but also, all of the great incentives that have been provided to homeowners and some renters or drivers of cars. So electric vehicle tax incentives, incentives for heat pumps or induction stoves, or making homes more energy efficient. Trump has said that he wants to roll back, he said he wants to repeal this bill, but that will be very complicated for him to do. So we don't anticipate him being able to do that, even though he has both chambers. There is a lot of Republican support for this bill. And frankly, they've been using a lot of the dollars. The last figure I saw was 80% of Inflation Reduction Act dollars went to red states or states that voted for Trump. So they are clearly seeing the benefits of this money. And so I think we may be defending certain aspects of this. I think certainly the electric vehicle tax credits are at risk, and maybe some of the other ones that are focused specifically on like solar and things like that. So we will be making sure that people understand the benefits of the IRA and why we should encourage Congress not to roll any of those back. Colorado is also relying on a lot of those dollars to do some of the work that we are committed to doing. Public lands front, we talked a little bit about this in our last meeting, but really defending Camp Hale Continental Divide National Monument, which was President Biden's first designation of a national monument. We've seen evidence that this is on the list. Trump has committed to basically repealing a bunch of national monuments, and I have heard that this one is on his list. So we'll be doing all we can to, defend this, whether that's meeting with members of Congress or writing letters to the editor or op-eds to make sure that people are making calls and sending emails to their congressional reps to encourage them, to encourage the president not to do that. And then also, we've been working on this Dolores Canyon National Monument campaign for a long time. We are, understandably, President Biden is probably not going to do that before he leaves office. And so, and we don't anticipate the new president coming in and making this a national monument. So, but in spite of that, we want to continue with the proactive advocacy around Dolores and making sure that we don't lose all of the ground that we have made around this, continuing to put pressure on Mesa and Montrose counties to stay at the negotiating table. Maybe we can get a bill, a bipartisan bill to provide some protections for Dolores, but really making sure that we are not losing that message around Dolores. And then finally, on defense work, we're going to be making a fuss, I guess, about some of the nominations, particularly the Department of the Interior and the Environmental Protection Agency. Both nominations are folks that have been critical of these agencies in the past or have, sort of sided with industry over, the public's protections around this. So of course, the EPA has tons of regulations that they're going to likely roll back. The Department of the Interior nominee wants to open up land, public lands for oil and gas leasing. So lots of work, again, it will be a lot of public um, um, uh, media opportunities, trying to get letters to the editor and op-eds published, make sure that that folks understand, who is getting nominated here, and see if we can put some pressure on the Senate. I mean, we have two pretty friendly senators here, but they will need to hear from Coloradans about we feel about these nominations as they work to confirm them or not confirm them. Before I move into that, any questions on the defense work or things folks are worried about? We'll move forward here. So just kind of looking at the calendar for the next few months, we do have a lot of stuff on our plate. So lots of opportunity to plug in if you're interested, and I hope you are. So of course, as I mentioned, the start of the legislative session is January 8th or 9th. I can't remember. It's set for the second Wednesday of the month. But we'll be meeting, having our first meeting as the legislative team. If you're interested in joining that, please let me know if you haven't already. I know I have some meetings and emails going with a few of you. So that will kick off. And then we are going to use these meetings to do some trainings on the legislature. So in January, we'll do a legislative 101 training. We'll do a how to lobby training as we get a little closer to our lobby day, which generally happens in March or April. We will be determining our priorities legislatively. We'll start meeting with some legislators. We typically hold at least one event where we try to get some media down at the Capitol, and we like to make that fun and exciting. So the Ledge team will be working on putting something together. We'll be asking folks to write letters to the editor, and probably other actions as well. You'll be getting emails to send notices to your legislator and things like that. We'll start prepping for lobby day. And for those of you that have not participated before this, we always have one day of the session where we host a lobby day, and everybody comes down, and you don't have to have any experience lobbying. It's really fun. But we break into teams, and we talk to legislators about our priority bills, and we try to target a time when those bills are most urgently in need of people talking to their legislators. So if you don't have to be part of the Ledge team to do that. We hope to have 20 or 25 people down there. And again, it's a really fun time and a fun way to participate in the session. Then, of course, we'll be working on that Excel ERP. That's the Pueblo campaign. And so opportunities to participate in that will include public comments. We anticipate there being opportunity for folks to give public comment. Sometimes that's written comments, and sometimes it'll probably be a combination of written and live testimony. One of the great things about our public testimony these days after the pandemic is that you can often testify remotely. So in fact, there's always an opportunity to testify remotely. So it doesn't matter where you live, you can participate if you're available at that time, and we can help you write your comments and give you talking points and any kind of help that you need. You don't have to be an expert. You're sort of speaking from, a mom perspective or or just a concerned citizen's perspective. We'll also be working on getting some letters to the editor published. And again, we can help you with those as well. We can help you write it. We can write something up for you, and you can, change it however you want to. We want to make sure that this is accessible and easy for you to participate. Our defense work will also probably start, I'm guessing we're going to be doing stuff starting now and working on some letters to the editor and op-eds. And in fact, if somebody is interested in submitting a letter to the editor on Dolores, please let me know. We're looking for somebody to help out with that. But probably, January, what we've heard is that Trump is going to submit, like, I don't know, 100 executive orders on day one. He seems like he's pretty prepared. And so, we'll be reacting to those as they come out. We will be meeting with our federal reps as well to talk about those concerns, particularly our new uh, congressman-elect in CD8. We are hoping that we might have some leeway with him or some ability to build a relationship with him there, and potentially the new rep in CD3. So we are, meeting with Democrats and Republicans and trying to, just help them understand why these public lands are important, why these nominations are scary, et cetera. And we can help set those up. And again, this is something that we can do remotely. So, hopefully it's an accessible opportunity for you. And then the Jeffco school sustainability work, we're going to be promoting this board policy and testifying at school board meetings if you live in Jeffco. So that. And then we also have a steering committee. Just wanted to put a plug in for that too. If you're interested in the school sustainability work, we have a smaller group of folks that meet on this about this on a regular basis. So if you're interested in that, let me know. Any questions about all of this? I know it's a lot. Hopefully there's something in there that you're interested in. Comments are also welcome. Okay, we'll move forward. Let's see, joining the LEDGE team. We went through this last month as well, so I don't want to take a ton of time, but just so you all are aware of kind of what this committee will work on. So again, the legislature meets early January to early May, and they will be focused on legislation that we're prioritizing. They're going to help us determine what our legislative priorities are this year. We are going to, as a team, design and build events to promote that priority legislation. And also, we do tend to work on other legislation as well, but we typically prioritize 2 to 3 bills each session, but there's often so much to do. So maybe we'll testify in committee on a bill, even if it's not our priority, or we'll send an email blast out to our members and ask them to weigh in, or maybe there's a problematic legislator that we think we can flip, and we may have, direct some calls into them. This committee will, be engaging their own lawmakers as well as other priority lawmakers. They will help put together our lobby day. So that may be helping recruit members to attend, or helping organize materials or things like that. And then engaging our members in grassroots lobbying efforts. So we may do some like phone banks, or send out emails to folks to ask them to, if they live in a targeted legislator's district that, hasn't committed to supporting a bill or is committed to supporting something we don't like. We may ask people from their district to call them, or to send them emails and try and shore up those votes. So that's really what the LEDGE team is targeted at, and we've had a lot of interest, which is exciting. So I think it's going to be a good group of people. And right now we're just I'm chatting with folks that are interested and want to get more information about it. Some people have already signed up, and we're just trying to figure out when our January meeting will be. But it should be fun if you're interested in the legislature, and participating there. And that's really what I had. So I'll go through this again and open it back up to see if there's any comments. But our next meeting will be January 8th at noon. We meet for 45 minutes. And as I mentioned earlier, the topic will be Legislature 101, just kind of how does the process work? How do we fold into that? And we'll do a deeper dive on lobbying. I also will be talking a little bit about the budget in that Legislature 101 training. So if you're interested in like, why are we in this situation? Why do we have to cut $1 billion? We're going to talk a little bit about how the budget works this year. And then, please think about joining the legislative team. And again, if you are interested in submitting a letter to the editor on Dolores Canyon protections, please let me know. We'd love to have, a few folks submit a letter, and I'm happy to help write it, and we can write it together, or I can put something together for you and you can react to it. But would love to kind of get that out there sometime this month. So I'll pause again and see if there's any questions. Okay. I guess we can end a few minutes early. I hope that this was helpful. And again, like I hope that there's something in here that you are interested in plugging into. Our whole ethos here at Mountain Mamas is to make it as easy as possible for you to plug in and influence these sorts of topics. They're often very wonky. They're often, when I started as a volunteer with this organization, and what I loved about it is that it made things that I wasn't paying attention to because they're not talking about it necessarily in the media. But it made participating in these sorts of things very easy as somebody who is not a policy expert and didn't know quite where to fit in. And I had a tiny infant at the time, and was able to either bring him or could do things remotely. So it was really easy and accessible, and hopefully you find it to be that way as well. So anyway, I guess with that, I will. Oh, I see a chat. Let me see. Oh, great. Thanks, Casey. Love wonky information. Yes, so thank you all for joining today, and I look forward to seeing you in January, if not before. Please reach out if any of this is interesting to you, and yeah, we'll talk again. So thanks, everybody.